What if the switch that turns off the lights in an American city isn't sitting in Ohio or Texas, but in a control room somewhere in China? For decades, that would have sounded like paranoia. Not anymore. In May 2025, U.S. energy officials tearing down Chinese-made solar equipment found something they weren't looking for: hidden radios, wired directly into the hardware connecting American solar farms to the power grid, never listed on any spec sheet. One former head of the National Security Agency described it to Reuters in blunt terms, saying there is clearly strategic value in seeding critical infrastructure with components that can be flipped off like a light switch. That single discovery is just the surface of something much bigger. From the transformers that keep substations running, to the batteries storing power for entire cities, to the raw magnets inside the machines that generate electricity in the first place, China has spent 2 decades quietly becoming the supplier America's power grid cannot function without. This isn't a story about cheap imports undercutting American factories. It's a story about a single foreign government sitting at nearly every layer of the system that keeps hospitals running, water treatment plants pumping, and refrigerators cold, at the exact moment America's grid is already stretched thinner than it has been in generations by AI data centers, electrified transportation, and record summer heat waves. And unlike a slow-moving trade dispute, this is the one form of leverage that doesn't take years to matter. It can happen in an instant. Here are 5 energy industries China controls that could paralyze America's power grid, counting down to the one that isn't really about supply chains anymore. It's about a switch. Number 5. China builds the solar panels America is betting its grid on, and almost nothing else comes close. Solar is now the fastest growing source of new electricity generation in the United States, which makes it a problem that China manufactures nearly the entire supply chain behind it. According to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, citing 2024 data from the China Photovoltaic Industry Association, China produced 93.2% of the world's polysilicon, 96.6% of silicon wafers, 92.3% of photovoltaic cells, and 86.4% of finished solar modules. The International Energy Agency puts China's share of global polysilicon, ingot, and wafer manufacturing capacity at close to 95% once facilities under construction come online, and notes that a single Chinese facility alone produces 1 out of every 7 solar panels made on Earth. Xinjiang province by itself accounts for roughly 40% of global polysilicon output, a concentration the IEA has flagged as a level of risk that would be considered alarming in almost any other global supply chain. Wood Mackenzie analysts have pointed out that a solar module made in China costs about half of what the same module costs to make in Europe, and 65% less than making it in the United States, a gap wide enough that American manufacturers simply cannot compete on price without direct government support. Ironically, some of that Chinese-made hardware has still qualified for American clean energy tax credits under the Inflation Reduction Act, meaning U.S. subsidies have, in effect, helped fund the very dependency officials are now worried about. China's own solar giants are stuck in the process too. Industry tracking site China Made in Tech reported that the country's largest panel makers, including Longyi and Tongwei, posted a combined loss of roughly $1.5 billion in the first quarter of 2026 alone. Their 10th straight quarter in the red, because Beijing has built so much manufacturing capacity that Chinese companies are now losing money shipping record volumes, a phenomenon the government itself has taken to calling involution rather than admit to outright overcapacity. That should be reassuring. It isn't, because even a solar industry hemorrhaging cash at home hasn't budged an inch on its share of the market abroad. When one country builds the panels, the wafers, and the raw material behind nearly all of them, it isn't really a competitive market anymore. It's a dependency with a price tag attached, one that keeps growing exactly when American electricity demand needs it most. Okay, so that's the panels. But panels alone don't keep your lights on after sunset, do they? Stick with me, because the next piece of this story is the equipment utilities are quietly betting the entire grid on for nighttime power, and almost none of it is made anywhere near American soil. Number 4. China builds the batteries America is relying on to keep the grid stable after dark. As solar and wind power a growing share of the American grid, utilities are leaning harder than ever on grid-scale battery storage to bank power for when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing. And industry forecasts expect the global grid-scale storage market to roughly grow from $16.9 billion in 2026 to over $90 billion by 2033, a pace of expansion that leaves almost no room for a challenger to catch up to whoever already holds the manufacturing lead. That storage market is overwhelmingly Chinese. Industry data from CNEV Post shows CATL alone controls close to 30 to 40% of the global energy storage battery market, depending on the segment. Supplying cells to major names including Tesla, BMW, and Volkswagen, with a production pipeline aiming for 1.2 terawatt-hours of capacity by 2030. BYD ranks second globally with its own vertically integrated blade battery platform, targeting 700 gigawatt-hours of production by the same year. And together the two companies are part of a group of Chinese manufacturers that produce more than 70% of the world's lithium battery cells. Research firm Emergent Research notes, China accounts for more than half of global lithium-ion battery production outright, and BESS Finder's 2026 industry ranking describes CATL as the dominant force in utility-scale battery storage worldwide. CNEV Post's own mid-2026 market data shows just how deep that grip runs inside the segment that matters most. Grid-scale storage accounted for 75.2% of all global battery storage shipments in the first half of 2026, and within that specific category, CATL alone held roughly 30%, with fellow Chinese suppliers Lithium, Eve, BYD, and Calb rounding out most of the rest of the top five. American AI data centers are only adding to the pressure. Analysts covering the sector note that the same explosion in data center electricity demand pushing utilities toward battery storage in the first place is also the reason cell supply for some grid projects is already tightening as customers rush to lock in volume early. This matters because grid-scale batteries aren't a convenience anymore. They're becoming core infrastructure, the buffer that keeps the lights on during peak demand and emergencies, the same buffer utilities are counting on to prevent the kind of rolling blackouts that have already hit parts of California and Texas in recent summers. And the company building most of that buffer answers, ultimately, to Beijing. So, China builds the panels, China builds the batteries sitting right behind them. If you think that's as bad as this gets, don't stop now, because it's not even close. Up next is a piece of equipment so boring nobody's ever made a documentary about it. And right now, American utilities genuinely cannot get enough of them, no matter how much they're willing to pay. Number 3. China is one of the few remaining sources for the transformers America's aging grid desperately needs. Power transformers are the unsung workhorses of the electric grid, stepping voltage up for long-distance transmission and back down for homes and businesses. And the United States is in the middle of a transformer crisis that predates this decade's AI boom, but has been massively worsened by it. According to a 2024 report to the U.S. government's National Infrastructure Advisory Council, wait times for large power transformers have stretched from a few months in 2020 to as long as 4 years today. And roughly 80% of large transformers used in the United States have historically been imported, primarily from Mexico, China, and Thailand. Wood Mackenzie data cited by PV Magazine shows demand for the transformers connecting new power plants to the grid grew 274% between 2019 and 2025, driven largely by AI data centers, EV charging infrastructure, and industrial electrification, while prices for the equipment have jumped roughly 80% over the same stretch. Some specialized units used to connect the largest power generation projects now average 144 weeks for delivery, according to Wood Mackenzie's own 2025 survey data, with some orders stretching past 4 years entirely. Domestic production is bottlenecked even further because the specialized steel used in most American transformer cores is made by a single company operating 2 plants in Pennsylvania and Ohio, meaning the entire domestic industry shares 1 point of failure before China even enters the picture. A vulnerability that federal grant funding aimed at expanding that steel capacity has only partially addressed so far. Newsletter China Talk has reported that security researchers have also raised concerns about undocumented components inside transformers sourced from overseas manufacturers, the same category of concern raised about solar inverters, and noted that a successful physical or hardware attack on America's transformer fleet would be difficult to recover from quickly given how few replacement units exist anywhere in the world. This isn't a new worry inside Washington either. A previous administration signed an executive order specifically barring the power grid from installing equipment sourced from foreign adversaries. And in 2025, a group of U.S. senators went further, writing letters demanding China be removed from America's critical infrastructure supply chains entirely. Yet the Department of Commerce's own analysis put the practical problem bluntly. Even with domestic manufacturers investing heavily to expand, delivery cycles still run 2 to 4 years, far too slow to close the current gap, which is exactly why American utilities keep placing orders with Chinese factories, no matter what Washington says. When the equipment that upgrades your grid takes longer to arrive than it takes to build a new power plant, the country supplying that equipment holds leverage that has nothing to do with tariffs. If transformers are the bottleneck slowing everything down, Here's the part that should actually worry you. There's one raw material sitting inside almost every piece of equipment we've just talked about. The turbines, the transformers, the motors, all of it. And China just proved to the entire planet exactly how fast it can turn that material off. Number 2, China controls the rare earth magnets that the rest of the grid physically cannot run without. Rare earth elements aren't just useful for consumer electronics. They're essential for the permanent magnets inside wind turbine generators, grid-connected motors, and specialized transformer components. And China dominates that supply chain almost completely. According to the International Energy Agency, China accounted for roughly 60% of global rare earth mining output in 2024. And more critically, around 90% of global refining capacity, the step that actually turns raw ore into usable material. In April and October 2025, Beijing formally weaponized that dominance, issuing a series of export control announcements covering 17 rare earth elements and, for the first time, asserting extraterritorial authority. Any magnet manufactured anywhere in the world would need Chinese government approval for export if it contained even 0.1% Chinese-sourced material or was made using Chinese processing technology. Law firm White & Case, which tracked the announcements as they were issued, noted the rules also extended to related lithium battery and synthetic graphite anode technology, meaning the same October 2025 measures touched both the magnets discussed here and the battery supply chain covered a moment ago. The IEA reported that carmakers in the United States and Europe were forced to cut production or temporarily shut down factories within weeks of the April controls taking effect, as permanent magnet shipments fell sharply almost overnight. China did pause the harshest measures until November 2026, following diplomatic talks with Washington. But the underlying licensing regime, covering elements like samarium, dysprosium, and terbium, used specifically in high-performance magnets, remains fully in place, and companies must still apply through China's State Council for a license that officially takes 45 days to process before a single magnet can leave the country. According to the European Parliament's own research service, the situation outside America isn't any better, noting that the European Union sources all of its heavy rare earth elements and 98% of its finished rare earth magnets from China, with no realistic alternative supplier at anywhere near the scale required. That's not a supply shortage. That's a demonstrated, tested ability to slow down or stop the flow of a material the American grid cannot physically function without, whenever Beijing decides the moment calls for it. Everything you've just heard is a slow squeeze, weeks, maybe months before it actually hurts. What's coming next isn't slow at all. Don't stop now, because number 1 isn't really about supply chains anymore. It's about something U.S. investigators found wired directly into equipment already sitting on American soil. And once you hear what that equipment can do, you'll understand why officials stopped calling China a supplier and started calling it something else entirely. Number 1, the equipment connecting Chinese solar and battery hardware to the American grid may already have a built-in way to shut it down remotely. In May 2025, Reuters reported that U.S. energy officials, stripping down Chinese-manufactured power inverters, the devices that convert solar and battery power into usable electricity for the grid, discovered undocumented communication hardware, including hidden cellular radios, not listed anywhere in the official product documentation. According to the reporting, these rogue components create an unmonitored channel capable of bypassing the firewalls utilities install specifically to prevent remote access from China. And similar undocumented devices were also found inside batteries from multiple Chinese suppliers over a 9-month investigation. One of Reuters' sources put it starkly. This effectively means there's a built-in way to physically destroy the grid. Former NSA Director Mike Rogers told Reuters that China clearly sees strategic value in placing components inside core infrastructure that can be switched off like a light switch. A comment that lands very differently once you know he ran the agency responsible for tracking exactly this kind of threat. This isn't hypothetical either. Sources told Reuters that solar inverters in the United States and elsewhere were remotely disabled from China in an incident in November, months before the discovery became public. An early warning sign that the capability isn't just theoretical, it's already been used. A separate piece covering the story described the forensic work behind it in more detail. Over a 9-month stretch, security teams logged multiple brands of Chinese solar inverters containing hidden wireless communication equipment buried directly on the circuit boards, absent from any published schematic, creating what one analysis called an out-of-band path, tunneling straight through the firewalls utilities depend on. A March 2025 Forescout research report separately documented critical vulnerabilities in solar inverter communication devices from several manufacturers, showing how the same 4G and Wi-Fi enabled hardware could be exploited to destabilize connected solar infrastructure. And the same report tied at least 3 additional 2024 cybersecurity incidents involving Chinese-linked hacking groups, including one identified as Flax Typhoon, to solar power monitoring devices specifically. U.S. Representative August Pfluger, a Republican member of the House Committee on Homeland Security, put the stakes plainly, saying the threat from the Chinese Communist Party is real and growing, whether it shows up as telecom hacks or as remote access to solar and battery inverters, and that it's long past time to increase American oversight of the equipment. Inverters aren't a niche product either. Reuters notes they're predominantly manufactured in China and used worldwide to connect solar panels, wind turbines, batteries, heat pumps, and EV chargers to the grid. China's government has publicly denied any intent to misuse the technology, telling Reuters it opposes what it called the generalization of national security concerns to smear its infrastructure achievements. But the hardware itself isn't in dispute. It's already installed, it's already connected, and right now, nobody outside a handful of forensic security teams knows exactly how many of these devices are quietly sitting on America's grid, in solar farms, in home battery systems, in equipment installed years before anyone thought to check what was hiding inside it. So, what does all of this actually add up to? Go back to that question at the start. What if the switch that turns off the lights in an American city isn't sitting in Ohio or Texas, but in a control room somewhere in China? Based on everything you just heard, that switch may already exist. The panels generating the power, the batteries storing it, the transformers moving it, if they ever arrive at all, the magnets inside the machines making it in the first place, and the inverters, sitting at the exact point where all of that equipment plugs into the American grid, potentially carrying hardware nobody asked for and nobody can fully account for. None of these 5 industries developed by accident either. The same manufacturing scale that let China capture 93% of the world's polysilicon is what let it capture the battery market behind it, the transformer components inside it, and the rare earth magnets running through all of it. This isn't the same kind of dependency the United States has dealt with before. Losing a factory town to cheaper overseas labor is a slow, painful economic story that plays out over a decade. Losing control of the equipment sitting between a power plant and a substation is a different kind of story entirely, one where the damage doesn't show up gradually on a balance sheet. It shows up all at once, in the dark, on a night when a hospital generator has 30 seconds to kick in before it matters. Controlling a country's energy supply chain used to mean controlling oil fields and pipelines. In 2026, it means controlling the panels, the batteries, the transformers, the magnets, and quietly, the switch. Drop a comment. Tell me which of these 5 industries worried you the most: the transformers America can't get fast enough, or the inverters that may already be wired to shut the whole thing down. Because keeping the lights on was never just an engineering problem. It's quietly become a question of who's actually holding the switch. And right now, the honest answer is that nobody in Washington seems entirely sure.